Hello and welcome everyone to our webinar on mitigating your business's health and safety legal risks with my friend Karl from the New Zealand Institute of Safety Management. Before we begin, a couple of housekeeping items. You will receive the recording and slides in your email. Please submit your questions in the Q&A box below and we will endeavour to answer them at the end. And please complete the feedback survey after the webinar. You will see we've got a poll question today. The poll question is, what is your biggest challenge when it comes to health and safety compliance? The first option is understanding my legal obligations. The second question, identifying and managing workplace risks, preparing for investigations or claims, building a strong safety culture, all of the above, or not sure, here to learn. Now, I'll give you the results of that poll shortly. Now, by viewing this webinar, you are eligible to receive a complimentary consultation with LegalVision to discuss how we can help your business. To claim your free consult, please just leave your contact details in the survey when that appears at the end, or contact us via our website. In the meantime, while I wait for the results of this poll, in the agenda, we are discussing today a quick overview of the legal landscape in New Zealand, touching on worker engagement and participation. Then my learned friend Karl will be talking to incident reporting, emergency preparedness and response planning. And lastly, we have some brief case studies and recent enforcement actions. So I've just got the poll question in. No surprises, pretty equal to be honest, but the winner was understanding my legal obligations together with building a strong safety culture. So hopefully Karl and I will do our best to get to either of those today. Now let's kick off. At the end of the day, we hope you're all going to go home with an understanding of your legal responsibilities under the Health and Safety at Work Act. You'll be able to identify some common pitfalls when it comes to health and safety in the workplace, and also learn some practical risk mitigation strategies. Now, I know most of the audience will be well versed, or at least know of, the Health and Safety at Work Act, but ultimately the main purpose of the Act is to protect workers and other persons against harm to their health, safety and welfare, and in doing so, eliminating or minimising risk arising from work. The Act recognises that a well-functioning health and safety system relies on participation, leadership, accountability by government, businesses and workers. I've also briefly referred to the Key Supporting Act in the next slide, but I will not go through each individual sector-specific regulations because there are countless, but it is worth mentioning that there are more limbs to the legal landscape than just the Health and Safety at Work Act. Now, here in New Zealand, WorkSafe is the primary workplace health and safety regulator. It operates under the Health and Safety at Work Act and is responsible for promoting and monitoring workplace health and safety across the country. There are a few key functions, being as a regulator, they do enforce the health and safety legislation, they issue improvement and prohibition notices, they have the ability to investigate workplace incidents and accidents, they can prosecute serious breaches of health and safety duties, set and monitor compliance with safety standards. They also have an advisory and educational hat that they wear. And in doing that, they provide guidance and resources. I'm sure many of you have been onto their website and there are countless resources on there for every type of workplace you can possibly think of. For the most part, there are resources on there. They develop codes of practice. They deliver education and training programs. And promote best practice. So they also issue licenses for high-risk work, e.g. asbestos removal. They approve health and safety representatives training and certify plant and equipment where required. Some of their key powers are obviously entering and inspecting workplaces, issuing those compliance notices, investigating those incidences and near misses, prosecuting offenders, and imposing some significant penalties, which are like up to 3 million for a corporation and 600,000 for an individual. In New Zealand, the safety framework, a person conducting a business and undertaking, also known as PCBU, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, has the central role and primary responsibility for the workplace health and safety. Now, the key roles are to ensure, which I'm sure you all know this buzzword, so far as reasonably practicable, the health and safety of workers and others who could be at risk by the business or undertaking. It's important to know that this is a proactive and ongoing obligation. The PCBU has specific duties, including ensuring that safe work environment, ensuring safe work procedures and processes, ensuring machinery, equipment and buildings are safe, ensuring safe use and handling of substances and materials, providing the staff with adequate safety information, instruction, training and supervision, conducting regular assessments of those workplace hazards, engaging with your workers on health and safety matters, eliminating those risks as far as reasonably practicable, and identifying and reviewing, updating risk control measures. So the PCBU concept recognises that workplace safety responsibility should sit with those who have the ability to influence and control workplace risks, regardless of the specific business structure. So under the Act, it sets out the specific duties. So the duties basically say that in leadership positions, they take active responsibility rather than leaving it entirely to operational managers. And an officer can include a director of a company, partners in partnerships, persons occupying positions of governance, such as a board member, chief executives and senior managers in some circumstances. And it's important to note that an officer can be paid or voluntary. Now, an officer doesn't have to be an expert in health and safety, and they may rely on information from others. This could include senior managers, experts on the subject, line managers. But if an officer does choose to rely on others, they must show that it is reasonable to do so. They must have enough knowledge to ask the right questions, get credible information, and follow up and challenge that information if needed. So that's the practical side of the legislation, the law framework. I will now hand you over to our expert, Karl.
Great, thanks, Jess. I guess one of the things that I wanted to talk about first of all is that health and safety doesn't have to be hard, okay? There's two things you've got to think about with health and safety. It's a regular part of the work that we do now. So think about the fact that you go and fill your car up with gas if you're working out somewhere. You don't spend a lot of time arguing about how long it's taking, you just go and do it. That's the key thing I want you to think about there. The other thing around health and safety is that there's really good resources available if you actually reach out and get those things. So don't be afraid to do that. First of all, I want to have a talk about policies and procedures. The key thing there is identifying what policies and procedures are going to apply to your workplace. What are the things that you need to be thinking about? For example, if you're working at height, let's go and have a look at the working at height regs, understand where they are. Making sure you've got those things in place, but more importantly, making sure you're updating them on a regular basis. Changes are coming through from the minister's side of things at the moment, and it's making sure that those things are being maintained and checked on a regular basis. Find someone that knows what they're talking about. The little bullet point I put is seek reliable advice, and that's a really key thing. Look, there's tons of information on the internet, but unless you actually know what you're looking at, you can actually get yourself in a worse position than you can if you actually deal with a professional. Now, through NZISM, we have a membership of HAZANS. HAZANS is the broader group that looks after all the health and safety in New Zealand. They have a national register. You can go there, search for someone that's got experience around the types of things that you're doing, and they can help you out there. If you're not comfortable doing that, you can contact myself through the NZISM, and we can put you onto head office and we can get someone to help you with that. Now, what I want to stress is that take the steps that are required to do what you need to do, okay? This is not the sort of thing that you can bury your head in the sand and think, oh, it'll be okay, okay? Those days are long gone in New Zealand. We've got to think about what's the next process for us. So what is the next process? Really, it's about making sure we've got worker engagement, okay? So what are the things that we're doing? The key thing around this I want to have a talk about is a thing called risk registers. If you don't know what that is, you need to go and get that sorted out. Now, if you've brought someone in to help you, which I strongly suggest, they're going to help you start to build that risk register. Again, it needs to be updated on a regular basis. Most of the time, you're going to be reviewing that at least yearly, but also post-incident. If you've had something that you've identified that's brought a new hazard into your workplace, you need to add that into your risk register. So what is a risk register all about? It's looking at the hazards in your workplace, the control measures that you're going to put in place, and where they fit into the hierarchy of controls. I won't spend too much time on that. That'll be the sort of thing you can talk about with your consultant. So think about what are the hazards, how are we dealing with it? Is there anything new? Okay. Now, is there anything that's been come into your workplace that's significantly different than what you've been doing before? Let's say you're in an engineering shop and you buy a new piece of machinery. The risk assessment that you do on that and the control measures that you use are going to be put into the risk register. Really, really key document. The other one that I want to have a quick chat about is identifying things on site when you're on site. There's this impression that this is going to take a long time. It actually doesn't. You would have heard of things like step back 5x5s. And it's literally just a 5-minute look at what's going on. And I get a lot of people say to me, oh, yeah, but Karl, I go to multiple jobs in a day. We're only talking about 5 minutes, okay? The key thing I'd say to you here is take a step back. Actually physically take a step back from your workplace. I want you to look up, I want you to look down, and I want you to look around. What are the hazards that could be in the area that could hurt me? And what are the things that I could bring into the workplace that could be a problem, okay? Now, following on from that, toolbox talks. Again, don't overcomplicate it. They don't need to be very difficult. Are you having a toolbox talk each time you go to site? Now, I know there's people that might do 5, 6, 7 jobs in a day. Again, it doesn't have to take a long time, okay? The key thing here is taking that stop and check. Have a look around. What are the things there that could hurt us, okay? Now, if you're using a paper system or an electronic system, document the hazards that you found on site. Make sure that you actually put control measures in place that are going to work, okay? Think about those control measures. Those are going to work for everybody to keep them safe, okay? Now, the key thing here with toolbox talks is consistency, okay? Don't start with a big flurry and then in a month's time drop them, okay? If you decide that you're going to do one at every job, great, but do one at every job. Make sure you've got that discipline going forward. It's the key thing to the whole thing. Now, flowing on from that, we're thinking about our teams, okay? If we've got a bigger team, we might be involved in a safety committee. So once you get over 20 people in your workplace, you're there to sort of support those teams. You're not driving it because this is about the workers taking an active engagement in what they're doing in your workplace. So think about the things about when are they going to meet? Where are they going to meet? What's the makeup of the committee going to look like? As I said, you can be part of the process, but you're there to lead and guide. You're not there to drive the process from the ground level, okay? So offer your support and guidance. If you've got health and safety people on board, sure, bring them along, get them involved, but it's your team that's leading this. Kind of following on from that is how we're getting feedback. What is the feedback we're getting from industry? What's the feedback I'm getting from my team? Are we getting those sort of things that are coming into our workplace where we're getting some really good feedback from the guys? Are we communicating that through to everybody else? Is there industry publications that are coming out? You can look at things like past incidents with other companies. The really key thing around the whole feedback thing is to feed the loop back in, okay? So for example, let's say that someone comes to you and they've found a problem, okay? So they've identified it to you, you said, yep, we'll have a look at that. Yep, that's an easy fix, I can get that done by tomorrow afternoon, okay? I'll shoot out and get that done. Once the fix is in place, go back to the person that you spoke to and said, hey, Bob, this is what we've done. We've put this in place. What do you think about that? Yep, that looks great. Fantastic. That's exactly what I had in mind. Or he might go, well, it's not quite what I had in mind. That's the opportunity where you can have the conversation. Okay, well, what do you think can make it better for us? How as an organisation can we help you? Flowing into all of this is really around training and competency, and it's a big thing that I want to have a quick chat about. There's two distinct things I want you to think about. Sorry, can we just get a slide change there, please? That's it. I want you to think about the training that's required for your workplace, okay? So for example, if you're doing a lot of work in confined spaces, make sure you've got your guys doing confined space training, okay? The key thing here is to think about two different things. Training, okay? So let's say that we want to send Bob away for training and he's working at heights, okay? The understanding here is that now Bob has the knowledge about working at heights, but we've got to try and put something in place that shows he's got a competency for this. So here's an example. Bob's been to his working at heights course. He's back in the yard now. So one of the easy things to do with getting an understanding for competency is to change the paradigm. He was the student, now make him the teacher. Okay, Bob, there's a structure over there. How about you tell me about how we would climb that and the sort of things that you learned at your course? Make sure it's regular, okay? Don't just train someone once and then forget about it. The other thing to think about with training is it job specific? Is the actual piece of machinery that they are working on similar to what they may have used in their training courses? As an example, for forklifts, you'll get certified on a particular type of forklift, but you're under an obligation to actually make sure you train them on your forklift in your workplace. So make sure it's specific. Think about how they're going to use it, okay? Show them or give them some competency process, you know. Okay, Bob, you know, every 3 months we're going to get you to access something and do a little job for us, just to show that it's working there. The key thing around training and competency that I really want to stress is making sure you're keeping documentation. Have you got a training matrix? If so, is everything listed on there? You might list things like inductions for work sites. You might list machinery that they use. Make sure it's up to date. If they've gone to a course, make sure you get the certificate back. If there's a fixed period for that piece of training, make sure you know when it's happening. Make sure you get them into the training courses before it expires. You got to make sure that you can show that that training is ongoing and consistent. Okay, so wrapping up from that and moving on to the next section for me is really around incident reporting and emergency preparedness. Two things I want to talk about. First thing, incident reporting. The key thing here is really making sure that you're actually recording everything that's happened, okay? This is not terribly well done in New Zealand, so don't beat yourself up if you're not doing a great job of it. You're not the only one, okay? What I want to make sure is that everything's getting reported, okay? Now, why is that important? Well, here's a quick example. This particular worker was working on a Friday afternoon. They injured themselves. It didn't look much, so they didn't report it. The boss didn't know anything about it. Sunday morning, they woke up, they had a massive infection. The whole hand was swollen up, was bordering on septicemia, taken into hospital. Process went through to ACC. ACC had some more questions. They went back to the employer. He didn't know anything about it. Didn't even know there'd been an injury, okay? Get your people to tell you everything that happened. I don't care if they've got a cut finger. Make sure you know about it. Get it on a report. There might be a lot of actions taken, but make sure you're getting it on there. The key thing around that is that we want to learn from those events. What happened and how can we avoid that happening again? Now, fingers crossed you never do, but if you do have a major event, make sure you report it, okay? But get a good report done that you can hand to other authorities, okay? You need to get proactive with this. A good investigation is vital, okay? Plenty of people around New Zealand that can support you around that. But what you're looking for is root cause. Now, bear in mind, that's not what WorkSafe are looking for. WorkSafe are looking for something that they can issue an improvement notice on, take someone to court, okay? So bear in mind the fact that you can't just say, oh, well, WorkSafe will figure it out. Well, they will, but to their advantage. You've really got to understand what's happened so you can avoid that happening again. Emergency replanning. A couple of things I want to talk about there. The first thing is the basic stuff, your fire, your earthquake and all that sort of thing. Very simple to get all that information. There's those flip charts you can buy online, real simple. Don't get overly complicated with that. But what I do want to talk about is if you've got anything in your workplace that's high risk, do you do confined spaces? Do you do working nights, for example? Make sure you create a plan for how to get your people to safety if an event happens while you're at site. Now, these are not the sort of things you want to be building last minute on a Monday morning ready for the week. Put the planning in before there and think about some of the things that you're going to need for that, okay? Build your rescue plan. Make sure that you've practiced it. That's a really key thing, okay? I like to see practices done back in the yard so that if there's anything going wrong, we can figure out where those hard points are, work on them. Okay, well, that didn't quite work, so what can we do? We can do this here. You will have to tweak it on site. Not saying that you won't, but make sure that you've got the basics of that plan already set up for you. In that planning stage, I want you to think about things like how long is it going to take someone to respond if we do have an emergency on site? And I'm talking about emergency services here. Think about things like where's the nearest hospital? How long is it going to take for an ambulance to get there? These things are really crucial for your planning because if you know about it beforehand, you save a lot of problems going forward from there. So what's all this wrapped up in? Well, this is all wrapped up in leadership. That's where the whole process comes together. And there's a few points I want to talk about with leadership, and they are really about where you sit in the leadership framework of things. Remember, you lead the process, okay? If you want commitment from your team, it's got to come from you. If you're one of these sort of people that sits go, oh, health and safety, oh, we're going to do that. That's the image that you're going to put out to everybody in your workplace. And that's exactly what you don't want, okay? You want them to think about health and safety as just a regular part of the job, okay? Okay, guys, let's go. We'll resume and do our toolbox meeting, okay? If you're upbeat, you're on board with it, they're going to come on board with it. The simple fact is, if you don't buy into it, you can't expect your workers to buy into it. So lead from the front, okay? If you do something well, they're going to do it well. The worst thing that you can do is that you do something incorrectly and then everybody starts to copy you. Then you see it happening and you go and pull them up and go, oh, you shouldn't be doing like that. And they go, well, that's how you do it, okay? So lead from the front. One of the other key things I want to talk about here is psychological safety. Remember that the things that you look at could be completely different than the way other people view it. Some of the things that you might think are funny or comical or just having a laugh may be quite offensive to other people. Now, in the world we live in nowadays, we deal with a lot of different religions, we deal with a lot of different cultures. So what we think might be acceptable may not be acceptable for those sort of things. What you've got to do is provide a space where people feel safe to come to you. And one of the great pieces of advice I got from an old manager was that you've kind of got to almost let things wash over you. Like they come to you and go, oh, I was mucking around and I dropped the spanner in there and I've blown the machine up. Don't fly off the handle, just react to it. Go, oh, okay, well, let's go and have a look. Let's see what we can do to fix it, okay? If you constantly throw negatives back at them when they've brought you a problem, they're gonna stop telling you things. And that's the worst thing that can happen inside your workplace. Remember, we've got legal duties, all of us do. I'm an employer. I understand that I've got legal duties. Jess has run through some of those things in her part of her presentation, but it is our requirement to protect the health and safety. And remember that wording through action or inaction, okay? If you decide to just do nothing, then that's when things are going to start to get really ugly, okay? So, next bit, I think we've got a bit of a shared one there, haven't we, Jess? So.
We have. So yeah, we thought that we might just talk to some live examples and a few case studies. So the one that I wanted to start off with was a working from heights one. So obviously that's pretty dangerous, let alone without the proper safeguards or training from your employer. But one worker, he had spent 6 months in hospital after falling 6 meters to the ground. And I won't go into the myriad of medical problems he has now. His employer, ProWash Wellington, had sent him out with no harness in wet conditions on a new iron roof that only had limited edge protection. So WorkSafe did an investigation. They found a harness system would have been used, and there was no formal training on use of a harness or roof anchors for Mr. Bowles. Notably, ProWash was unable to provide WorkSafe with any policies, no risk hazard identification, no control process, and they were not able to obviously prove that they had a safe system of work. So no surprises, they were sentenced in April this year. They did get a $325,000 penalty, which actually was reduced due to the incapacity financially of the defendant. And there was also reparations to Mr. Bowles. And the other one that was more of a positive light, which obviously came from something sad, but it was from EcoStore, which is obviously a well-known brand, where they have taken action as a result of a worker suffering chemical burns to his eyes while making dishwasher powder. So the worker was injured while trying to shut off a pressurized hose, and it sprayed hazardous liquid into the air in the factory. So WorkSafe investigated, found there was an inadequate supply of PPE, in particular eyewear, which you would have thought was pretty stock standard in that industry, but there was staff training gaps for chemical handling, and there was a lack of emergency management. So in response to the incident, EcoStore actually made what it called a holistic cultural shift for the health and safety, worth over $23,000. But yeah, so the company actually applied to WorkSafe for an enforceable undertaking, which is actually a binding commitment about their improvements. And the undertaking included installation of CCTV systems, which actually incorporates AI technology, which I thought was actually really interesting. There's new working platforms for liquids manufacturing, reparations to the victim. They also are funding a pilot program by Blind Low Vision NZ to educate and support businesses employing visually impaired staff, with a focus on workplace health and safety, inclusion and wellbeing. And they also develop and deliver a webinar with the Employers and Manufacturers Association, highlighting the incident that did occur and some of their key learnings. So I just found it interesting to know that EcoStore's actual investment far exceeded what even the courts may have ordered in penalties. So this case obviously demonstrated a substantial commitment to health and safety, with benefits circling back to community and workers, and obviously the industry. So I'll pass on to Karl for your two cases.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. So the couple that I'm going to talk about are aimed towards the rural sort of environment. But the key takeaways I want you to think about is have a look at what we've put down there. Lack of risk assessment, okay? Something that I spoke about just earlier about those simple things that we can do when we get to a workplace. Now, very briefly behind the scenes here, I won't say the names of the companies. I'm not a big fan of that. These people have been through enough trauma. So then what was happening was a young guy was doing some work. He was working in a paddock. He had a tractor and a machine that he was towing, and he got stuck. So what he did was he went back to where his sort of staging area was, and he obtained an excavator. And the theory was that he was going to pull everything out with the excavator. Now, what he didn't do was he didn't do a simple risk assessment, that look up, look down, look around. And what happened was that once he had attached his chains and things to the front of his little tractor that he was working on, he lifted the boom of the excavator, which went into an 11,000 volt line, and unfortunately he died. Now, one of the things I said to you before was having that look at, look up, look down, look around, okay? And that physical act of taking a step back is crucial to identifying those things in your workplace, okay? What it does is it shifts you out of the environment, because we're all in situations where, you know, we're in a hurry to get it done, you know, the client's asking us to get this finished or whatever. But that little step back, that physical change to do something which is just as simple as looking up, oh, hang on, there's a power line there. Maybe I need to go and get a spotter and have someone there with me. Now, I can't remember the fines on that one, but Jess can probably tell us. The worst thing about that is that employer's now got that hanging over them, and that's not a very pleasant thing to have. The other one I wanted to talk about was around a farm situation. In this particular situation, they were unloading product off a trailer with a very, very heavy steel door at the back of it. Now, the worker had been tasked to help clean out the product that was coming out of the back of the trailer. And what happened was that the driver let the gate go, and the gate actually crushed the worker, and unfortunately they passed away from injuries at the scene. Now, the big thing around that is that again, there were some very simple things that weren't done. They hadn't done a traffic management plan and looked at what's the interactions with vehicles in our workplace. Do we actually need to have people in that area at all? As it turned out, they probably didn't. And the other thing was they actually didn't even have a simple standard operating procedure on what was going to happen. So very basic control measures that don't take a lot of time. And as you can see, 247,000 in fines and 200K in reparations. That's a big chunk of money out of your profit. And remember, you can't insure against that as well. So those things can have a huge impact on our business. So it's making sure we're getting the basics and we're getting the basics done correctly. Thanks, Jess.
Thanks, Karl. So yeah, lastly, I've just put a slide there with a few ways that we can help with legal advice, which does play a crucial role in these health and safety matters across various scenarios. Obviously, we've spoken about health and safety policies, those legal compliance, ensuring or establishing systems for officers to meet their legal obligations. Then there's obviously the investigation response and guidance about what information must be provided or legally privileged, ensuring the critical information is properly secured. So just a few of those things in the background that we can obviously advise on when you're in the heat of the moment. The enforcement actions, so challenging or responding to those improvement notices, representing clients in WorkSafe prosecutions, reducing penalties. And then there's obviously post-incident legal support, which can obviously be coordinating insurers, managing coverage issues, engaging with WorkSafe on enforceable undertakings. And then there's the strategic advice in the back, which is, minimising the personal liability exposure for officers, the due diligence and health and safety liabilities, and coordinating those legal, operational and reputational responses. So that includes the main part of our webinar. You might find our publication useful, called NZ Safety Essentials for SMEs. We also have an upcoming webinar, When Contracts Fail, Legal Strategies to Protect Your Business, which is going to be held on the 9th of September, which is a Tuesday at midday in New Zealand. And we're going to answer your questions shortly. And while you submit them, we've also had some pre-submitted questions. We'll just take a minute to tell you about LV's membership. So by becoming a LegalVision member, your business gets unlimited access to our full team of 100+ specialist lawyers for all of your BAU legal needs. It's like having your own in-house counsel for a fraction of the cost. Our team can assist you with unlimited document drafting and reviewing of business contracts, unlimited legal advice consultations, and unlimited domestic trademark registrations and more. As a LegalVision member, you won't worry about the costs of lawyers, and think of it as having your in-house lawyer, and will take the care of your BAU work. So you can just focus on running your business. If you are in-house counsel, we also offer a dedicated service to managing your high volume business as usual legal tasks. So to learn more about membership or desk extension can help, just request a free consultation when the survey appears at the end of the webinar. And here's just a link with Karl's details. He's kindly handed out his phone number. So there we go, and his email address too. So we've had a few questions that were pre-submitted, and I can see a few in the poll. So we'll endeavour to answer some of them now in the next few minutes, noting we don't want to go over time here. So one of the questions I've got here, Karl, was health and safety requirements for non-for-profits who only have contractors and volunteers, not staff.
Yeah, interesting question. Thanks, Jess. Really, there's no difference. If you're employing contractors, they're still classed as workers, and you still have an obligation under the Act to make sure that you're doing the things that are required for them. So volunteers are still classed as workers. They don't have any differentiation just because they're not paid. Okay, so if there's hazards in your workplace that they need to know about, you need to have that structure in place to go for there. What I say to my clients is it's no different than a standard business. That's the way you've got to think at it. It's probably not going to be as complex, but it still has to be in place. Thanks, Jess.
Thanks, Karl. So another one was, what's the difference between improvement and prohibition notices? Yeah, and what should you expect with each?
That's a good one, because that's the scary part of it all. So an improvement notice is actually used by inspectors if there's specific provisions in the Act or regulations that you're not meeting. It'll first of all, it'll set out what are the things that you're not doing, and it'll also set out a time period which will give you sort of a grace period to get those things sorted before you can have that removed. Now, you can carry on trading while those things are in place, but you do have to report back when you've actually done them. So it's probably the lower end of the scale of those things that WorkSafe will issue. Now, prohibition notice, that's a different thing. That means you're carrying out an activity in a specific way that needs to stop immediately. You won't be able to carry on with that, so you can't have that piece of plant running, for example, until those things have been fixed, okay? It is immediate, and it is normally because they've identified a serious risk to workers or others. So two things there. Hopefully you get an improvement notice, but what I would say is if you get either of those two things, don't mess around with them, okay? These people, they don't play ball very nicely, so if you do get them, work with them. They are great to work with. I've worked with lots of them over the years, but make sure you follow the rules they've put in place.
This is another good question. Is it better to have a paper system or an app system, Karl?
Yeah, we've had some good questions coming, actually. That's a really good one. This is what I say to my clients. Health and safety is about a discipline, okay? A discipline, in my case, with my companies that I work with, what I say to them is if you've got a paper system in place first, get that going well before you transfer straight onto an app or something like that. It's about the discipline, okay? If you can monitor your app really, really closely, which some of them can, that's great, but you need to have a champion that's looking after that all the time, okay? It's pretty easy for paperwork to come back so the office lady can have a quick look at it on a Friday afternoon. But that's about discipline. Either system that you pick, they're all pretty much of a muchness, but make sure you've got the discipline and you're doing them. I don't really mind either way with my clients, but make sure that you've got discipline. That's the key thing. If you're going to run an app, make sure someone's monitoring it and looking after it. Thanks, Jess.
Thanks, Karl. So another one that we received earlier was, to what extent do we as principal developer still have health and safety obligations when the main contractor has full control of the site? Is there any case law on this? I think we can both speak to that one. Yeah, I mean, my view is that you absolutely still retain those health and safety obligations, even when the contractor has full control of the site. And there are overlapping and non-delegable duties, was my view on that pre-submitted question. And yeah, I didn't go through case law on it, but I think that there would obviously be a lot of cases on that where there would be the two, principal and developer and contractors on the site. Did you have any thoughts on that, Karl?
Yeah, so I absolutely agree with 100%, Jess. You can't transfer your liabilities. That's basically what the law is saying. The other key thing around that too is there are some quite good case laws around those shared responsibilities. So I'm thinking of one case which was SBS versus WorkSafe. That was around a trucking incident where someone was struck by the bucket of a loader. It turned out that both parties that were involved, so there were multiple parties working on site, and they were all held to be responsible under WorkSafe. So yeah, I'm with you 100% on that one, Jess.
So one of the questions that we've received on the platform is, if I use a contractor to conduct the business activity, e.g. Uber driver business model, what are my obligations beyond documentation and online training material, video, etc.? There we go. Did you have any view on that one, Karl?
Yeah, well, to me, the fact that you're using a contractor doesn't really make any difference. Yeah, the fact that you're working inside a framework was really only going to give you a sort of process. The fact that you are employing a contractor, it means you're still going to have to meet your requirements. You're still going to have to understand what the hazards are. You're still going to have to make sure you're taking all reasonably practical steps to keep them safe. So from my side of things, my obligation beyond document online training material. Yeah, I would probably be working a little bit more closely with them with just relying on the training material, because it's really about identifying what are the hazards they have to deal with every day and how we're going to deal with those.
Yeah, I agree with that one. And obviously, just in the background, also make sure they are a contractor, not an employee vicariously through that definition. So yeah, and obviously looking at the insurance aspects too, maybe of what the contractor has as well. Because yeah, they might not just have any health and safety practices at all. So I would be guiding them as much as possible. You might know the answer to this one, Karl. Does it need to be?
So Ken, it a little bit depends on the industry that you're in. Some things will require you to have a unit standard. And the good thing about unit standards is, depending on the unit standard, once you get them, you hold them for life. Some organisations, like the electricity divisions, they'll want you to renew those every couple of years. So it depends a little bit on the industry that you're going to be working in. Now, if you are doing something that is in-house, that is fine. But what I would caution you against is making sure that the training you're getting does meet a standard. So for example, if you decide you don't want to go and do NZQA training for working at heights, whoever's teaching you still needs to be teaching to the same standard. And that's what they're going to look at. If workplace investigators come into you, that's what they're going to be looking at. Is the training done to an acceptable level? Okay. So that's kind of how I would put that question. On a bit of a long-winded answer, Ken, I'm sorry, but it depends a little bit on where you're working. And again, it's all around the risks that you face at work. You know, higher risk industries, I would definitely recommend that you spend the money and go to NZQA or unit standard. If it's something in-house, like we've just done one with an office environment, which is setting up your desks, we didn't follow a unit standard, we just followed industry best practice. Second one from Ken there, is a permit system required or must it be mandated? The regulation says an SOP works. Again, it will depend on the workplace that you're going into, okay? So most of the times you'll see permit to work systems in higher risk environments. So it's just working with your client to understand what are their requirements. I wouldn't go and reinvent the wheel. There are plenty of permit to work systems already in place. You can probably just tack onto one of those.
Great. Well, I think that's all we have time here for today. Sorry if you haven't answered your question, and if you've thought of questions along the way, you can obviously submit them in our survey. And obviously you've got Karl's contact details and our contact details. So while this is a free webinar, we do value your feedback. So please submit the survey at the end. Thank you for joining us. Thanks, Karl.
Thank you for having us along, Jess. It's been really good. Thank you.
Cheers.